Hi everyone, and welcome to my COVID office, which, as I said, is my kitchen. And if you're listening to those sounds in the background, we just got a new cat, and he and my other cat are trying to work out their differences. So it's kind of, if you hear a few hisses and growls and screams, that's what's going on. I promise I'm not torturing animals. So just if you're interested, behind me is a birch tree that is holding up my second floor, and it does have a flying pig in it that was one of my daughter's elementary school art projects, which we liked and we figured it would do well in the tree. So anyway, welcome to my virtual, or my office. It's your virtual place to come and visit me. That was Mango, who just went down the stairs behind me. But the reason I am making this video is I want to share some thoughts with you. I realize it can be hard to know what I'm talking about when all you have are words on the screen to go by. To some extent, that state of semi-confusion is intentional on my part because I want you to find your own way and your own paths through the readings and writings and exercises. But it did occur to me that I could give you a little more instruction. So first, the discussion postings. I've loved what I've been reading so far, a lot of which has been about the content of the readings. Even when you're writing about content, though, or when you're writing about the style of the writing, it's really important to give specific examples, quotes from the reading. I mean, your whole post should not be made up of quotes, but there should be enough of the author's actual words to show your reader what you're talking about. These quotes should be exact. I have a concept I call the 3 or sometimes 4 respects. There's respect for the reader, respect for the source, and respect for yourself. In this case, quoting exactly is obviously respect for the source. The author obviously phrased what they wrote the way they did on purpose. So changing what they wrote is disrespectful. It's also respect for your readers. You owe it to them to convey things as clearly as possible. And respect for yourself is about taking pride in your own work, your exactitude. So be observant, be specific, and be precise. So let me show you a little bit about how I go about identifying the quotes that I would be interested in writing about. And I'm not very good at this camera thing, but I will show you in my book. Try to get this in focus. You can see that I've underlined things, that I've starred things, that I write things in the margin. For example, this passage from the introduction talks about surfaces, and I wrote up there that there's no hidden meaning and that that's something important to me to convey to you. Now, this is my current copy of the book, but for years when I taught this class, I did it from a handout. And in the handout, you can see I have basically years worth of notes on the page in different colors and different times because I've read this about 15 times, and every time I read it, I find more in it. So I'm going to pick a couple of these quotes and tell you why I marked them so you can see the kind of thing that I want you to look for. But again, I want you to realize that I've read these chapters many times, and each time I'm struck by many of the same things that still delight me, but also new things that I hadn't noticed the first time. With good writing, good music, good art, there's always more to see and hear, and we certainly wouldn't listen to a song that we love only once. So I want to show you on page 3, there's this wonderful sentence that I underlined down here. He's talking about his trailer, and he says, "An iron lung it is, with windows and Venetian blinds." So I think that's an amazing, who would think to compare a trailer to an iron lung? So it's like, it wakes us up a little bit because it's a new metaphor. But also, notice how his sentence, the syntax of it is different. Instead of saying, "it is an iron lung," he says, "an iron lung it is." And then he's very specific with windows and Venetian blinds. And so this little sentence just has a beauty and a rhythm to it, and also it has a metaphor, but it also has actuality, it has specificity. So I want to show you other passages. On page 6 and 7, you can see I have a ton of notes. He talks about he's talking about describing the arches, and I don't know if you guys have the same page numbers as I do, but this is like the last couple pages of the chapter. And the first place that I marked is where he talks about he's comparing them to gods and ogres, but he's trying to keep himself from personifying the um, the natural, because he wants to just see it as it is, and that's kind of what I want you to do. Now then he said he wants to free it from the humanly ascribed qualities, and it's anti-Kantian, and frankly I had to look that up, and what that means is he's trying to say that, you know, the world is what it is, it's not meant to be meaningful to us. And then he talks about to meet God or Medusa face to face. And I don't know if you remember the myth of Medusa, but she was a beautiful woman who Poseidon, the god of the sea, had seduced, but she didn't want to be seduced, and so he was angry and he turned her into a gorgon with snakes for hair, and anyone who looked at her would turn to stone. So he's like, I want to meet Medusa, and somehow, you know, it might turn me to stone, but then maybe I would understand the stone better. He wants to kind of merge with the things around us. And he says, there's this beautiful sentence, I dream of a hard and brutal mysticism in which the naked self merges with the non-human world and yet somehow still survives intact, individual, and separate. Paradox and bedrock. I think his sentences are incredible. And then he goes from that very sort of lofty idea, quick change back to reality, which I wrote here. Well, the sun will be up in a few minutes and I haven't even begun to make coffee. I take more baggage from my pickup, the grub box and cooking gear, go back in the trailer and start breakfast. And then he talks about the orange juice is frozen, the milk is slushy. So he goes very easily from the lofty the um, to the just very specific details of day to day. And I really want you, as much as possible, to stick with the details, and then you can have a little loftiness, but it needs to be supported by the details. So back to the idea for your first essay, which is the juniper tree essay. And it comes from this passage in the introduction where he says, if a man knew enough, he could write a whole book about the juniper tree. Not juniper trees in general, but that one particular juniper tree, which grows from a ledge of naked sandstone near the old entrance to Arches National Monument. When you write your juniper tree essay, you're not meant to be writing about an actual juniper tree because we don't have any around here. And even if you've seen one, I don't want you writing from memory. I want you to write from something you can actually look at and experience right now. It doesn't have to be anything huge. Like he said, I mean, a juniper tree is a really common tree out in Utah where he is. Maybe you're just looking at a Scotch pine or a spruce tree or your mailbox, or, you know, it doesn't even have to be something in nature. I had a student write a really good essay about her laptop, you know, but it's just something you need to really spend some time with looking at and not researching, not connecting memories with it, but just actually describing it. And you don't even have to mention the juniper tree, you don't have to mention Edward Abbey. This is about your situation. Or your thing that is somewhat meaningful to you and that you want to learn something from. And your Seeing journals are practice practice for that. So I just want to like do a kind of a little bit of an example of one with you. So the other day, my daughter brought me flowers, and I was very touched. But I suspect she works in a store that sells these flowers, and I suspect these were on their way out. And then later, she said she brought them to me because she's been out so much with her friends, and she felt like she had abandoned me. Um, but yeah, I kind of suspected there was more to it. And then she told me her boss had said she should bring me flowers. So I think her boss was like, yeah, we got to get these flowers out of here anyway. Do something nice for your mother. I'm going to show you the flowers. They're very pretty, I think. And I do know the names of some of them. Like, oops, where am I? This orange one here. The camera's backwards, is a zinnia, and these are cosmos, and this is some kind of lily up here, and some kind of sunflowery thing over here. And then there's like this thing, which used to stand up straight, but it's wilted before anything else has on here. And I don't know why, and I don't know what it is really. So I would do my first seeing journal on this just because it's catching my eye, you know. So first I'm going to describe it in as much detail as possible. It has these sort of feathery catkins that's, but all in a stalk coming to a point. They're sort of furry a little bit, and the color is a medium kind of a little bit reddish brown, maybe almost an orangey brown. And that's the color it was even before it started wilting. And then the leaves also are wilting, and you can see that they bend. They have an arc shape, almost a, well, oh no, I just spilled water on my laptop. Almost a rainbow arc to them. And so I would describe that. I would describe the length of the leaves. Some of them are about 3 inches long. Some of them are about 2 inches long. They have striations coming from a middle line down the middle. They're fairly evenly spaced, maybe a 1/4 inch apart. It's the middle line and the stems are more brown, and the leaves themselves are still very green even though it's wilting. So those are the kinds of details that I would put in my seeing journal, and I would have like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 sentences of the actual detail, maybe even more depending how complicated it is. Like this is fairly complicated. I might have 6 or 7 sentences about what the thing actually looks like, and then I would start asking questions about it. So what is it? Why did it wilt before the others? Is this a common plant? Does it grow around here? Is it a wildflower? Is it something somebody cultivates? How common is it? So, and those are all things I could research. So what I'm looking for is very specific description of the thing, whatever it is, and then researchable questions. Not that you have to do any research for your seeing journals, but I want you to be thinking in terms of questions that you could find out the answer to, because your first essay is going to be simple description, no research, but your second essay is going to be going back to that same subject, that same thing, whether it's a juniper tree, whatever it is, and researching it a little bit and finding out something about it that you might not have known, basically going down the rabbit hole with it to learn new things. So I want you to be thinking, first of all, in terms of seeing things clearly and being able to describe them, and then going later, you know, asking the questions that you would research. You don't have to do the research for your seeing journals, but I want you to ask those questions. All right. So lastly, I do want to say that Blackboard sucks. It's a great improvement over some of the ways we've been teaching online in the more than 20 years that I've been teaching online, but it's still very clunky. And people have noticed that it doesn't deal well with fonts. So please don't worry about that, but I am about to show you a little trick for fixing them. But if you forget to do it, it really doesn't matter. What you write is what matters. So here's your little trick. All right. So this is how you can fix fonts when you paste something into a discussion, or sometimes even when you're not cutting and pasting, it will do this to you. So I'm going to, whoops, I'm going to create a thread, and it's going to test, and I'm going to paste in some text that I copied from somewhere. And you can see that it comes in pretty ugly. It's got this background to it. So what I can do is I can highlight it all, and then this little thing over here is the font eraser, and now it goes back to this. Now if I want to leave it like that, that's fine. If I want to change the font, I can do that. If I want to make it bigger, I can do that. If I want to italicize something or bold something, you can also use your keyboard shortcuts like Control B and Control I if you want. But basically, this is your format eraser. So if you highlight everything and click that, it will take everything away. Unfortunately, it will also take away anything that you've already italicized or bolded, or have bullets or anything like that. So you've got to think about whether it's worth going back and doing all that again, or because it doesn't really matter, but I know it frustrates me when don't look good, and I know it's been frustrating some of you. So I just wanted you to know how to fix it if you want to. Now this first week I've been pretty lenient about deadlines because it was add drop week and people were getting used to the new schedule. But from here on out, just remember that we are on a Tuesday-Friday schedule. I know that's off from other classes, but the idea is that the week is divided as close to 50-50 as is possible in a 7-day week. So maybe give yourself calendar reminders so you remember to do the work for this class. Pretty much everything except discussion responses can be done ahead of time. And if I've been good and have that week's content open, and if I haven't been, if I got distracted, just shoot me an email. You do have the whole course schedule in the what's due when spot in the main left-hand menu of the page, so that should guide you in general. All right, enjoy the rest of your long weekend and never worry about asking questions. Email is probably the fastest way to get answers, with text as a close second, but try email first. Yeah, so I am looking forward to reading more of your work on the discussion page. Take care.